The hotel lobby buzzed with chatter, but at the reception desk, tension filled the air. A black family stood, visibly upset, as the receptionist sneered at them. "I am sorry, but your reservation cannot be honored. Maybe a different hotel would suit people like you better," he said, loud enough for others to hear. The father's face tensed with anger, but he stayed calm for his wife and 2 kids, who looked on in confusion. The mother, holding back tears, said, "But we have a confirmed booking. This is unacceptable." The receptionist scoffed. "There must be a mistake. Please leave, or I will call security." Sitting nearby, Jason Statham observed the scene, his jaw tightening. The blatant injustice was too much. Rising from his seat, his icy glare locked on the receptionist as he stepped in, ready to take a stand. Like and subscribe to show, if you believe in kindness, and comment, would you take a stand for others? Jason Statham's car pulled up to the grand entrance of the luxurious hotel, its sleek architecture gleaming under the afternoon sun. Valets rushed to open his door, and the doorman greeted him with a warm smile. Jason nodded politely, grabbing his overnight bag and stepping into the opulent lobby. The space was extravagant, with marble floors, golden chandeliers, and a fountain centerpiece that exuded wealth and exclusivity. As Jason approached the front desk, he noticed the staff bustling behind the counters, their tailored uniforms crisp and their smiles practiced yet hollow. The air carried an elitist vibe, the kind that catered to those who thought wealth granted them superiority. Jason's sharp eye caught subtle moments. The dismissive tone used on a couple asking for assistance, the way a bellhop rushed to serve one guest but ignored another who looked less affluent. Just as Jason began checking in, his attention was drawn to a family entering the lobby. A black couple, likely in their mid-30s, walked in with their 2 children, a boy around 10 and a younger girl clutching a stuffed animal. The parents were smiling, chatting with their kids about their planned getaway. The little girl giggled, pointing excitedly at the grand chandelier above. Their happiness was infectious, a stark contrast to the cold, indifferent stares they received from the hotel staff. Jason glanced at them as they approached the reception desk. The mother politely handed over a printed confirmation while the father gave a confident smile, clearly proud of planning this family trip. But the receptionist barely looked at them before his face twisted into a condescending smirk. "There seems to be a problem," he said, his tone curt. The family's cheerful demeanor shifted. "Problem?" the father asked. "We have a confirmed booking. Here's the email." The receptionist barely glanced at the phone screen before shaking his head. "Unfortunately, our rooms are fully booked. There must have been an error with your reservation." The father frowned. "That cannot be right. We booked weeks ago." The receptionist's tone grew sharper. "Sir, I do not have time to argue. Perhaps you should try another hotel." The dismissal was blatant, and the mother's face fell as she pulled her children closer. The boy's smile had faded, and the little girl hugged her stuffed animal tightly, sensing the tension. Jason watched, his expression darkening. He noticed the subtle glances exchanged between staff members and the patrons in the lobby who were silently judging the family. He could not stand by and let this happen. As the receptionist coldly suggested security might assist them if they did not leave, Jason's voice cut through the air like steel. "Is there a problem here?" All eyes turned to him. The receptionist froze, recognizing the unmistakable presence of the man standing before him. Jason Statham was not just any guest, and he was not about to let this injustice slide. The black father took a steadying breath and tried again, keeping his voice calm despite the rising tension. "Listen, we've traveled a long way for this trip. We booked in advance, and we have the confirmation. Surely there is something you can do." The receptionist leaned back, arms crossed, his smirk deepening. "Sir, I already told you, there's nothing available. Maybe you should try one of the budget hotels down the street. I'm sure they'll have accommodations that suit you." The insinuation hung in the air, sharp and stinging. The mother's jaw tightened, and her grip on her daughter's shoulder firmed protectively. The boy looked up at his father, confused and nervous, while the little girl whispered, "Daddy, why are they being mean?" Before the father could respond, the receptionist reached for the phone. "If you don't leave now, I'll have to call security to escort you out." Jason, standing just a few feet away, set down his bag. His sharp gaze had been on the exchange from the start, and now he stepped forward. "I don't think that'll be necessary," Jason said, his voice low and firm, cutting through the tension like a blade. The receptionist glanced up, startled, and immediately recognized him. His smirk faltered, replaced by an uneasy expression. "Mr. Statham," he stammered. I didn't realize you were here." Jason didn't respond to the greeting. His piercing eyes were locked on the receptionist. "I've been here long enough to see how you've been treating this family. Care to explain what's really going on?" The receptionist sputtered, glancing nervously at his colleagues, but Jason didn't let him off the hook. "They have a confirmed booking," Jason continued, gesturing toward the father. "So why are you refusing them a room?" The father, emboldened by Jason's support, stepped forward. "Exactly. We've done everything by the book, and now we're being turned away because, what? You don't like how we look." The receptionist's cheeks flushed, and his tone turned defensive. "Sir, I already explained. There's been an overbooking issue. It has nothing to do with—" he trailed off, realizing how weak his excuse sounded under Jason's intense scrutiny. Jason raised an eyebrow, unimpressed. "Overbooking? That's convenient. Let me guess, you've managed to find rooms for everyone else in this lobby, but this family is somehow the exception." Murmurs spread through the onlookers, who were now watching the scene unfold with rapt attention. The receptionist shifted uncomfortably, his confidence unraveling under the weight of Jason's calm yet commanding tone. "I don't think you realize who you're speaking to," the receptionist finally snapped, trying to regain control. "I'm simply doing my job, and if you don't like it—" Jason cut him off with a quiet but powerful response. "Your job is to treat every guest with respect, no matter who they are. But right now, you're doing the exact opposite." The atmosphere in the lobby was thick with tension. Hotel staff exchanged uneasy glances, unsure of how to intervene, while the onlookers whispered among themselves. The little boy tugged on his father's sleeve and whispered, "Dad, is he helping us?" Jason glanced at the boy and gave a small nod. "Don't worry, kid. No one's kicking you out." Turning back to the receptionist, Jason took a step closer, his presence radiating authority. "Now, here's what's going to happen. You're going to stop harassing this family, find their reservation, and give them the room they booked. Or do I need to take this higher up?" The receptionist paled. "Mr. Statham, there's no need for that." Jason leaned in slightly, his voice dropping lower. "Then fix it. Now." Faced with no other choice, the receptionist fumbled with the computer, his hands shaking as he typed. Within seconds, he found the family's reservation and confirmed their room. There was a mistake," he muttered, avoiding Jason's gaze. "The room is ready." The father exhaled in relief, his shoulders relaxing as he took the room key. "Thank you," he said to Jason, his voice filled with gratitude. Jason gave a small nod. "You shouldn't have needed my help. But I'm glad you stood your ground." He turned to the receptionist one last time. "Apologize to them." The receptionist hesitated, then mumbled a weak, "I'm sorry for the inconvenience." Jason's sharp gaze hardened. "That's not good enough. Mean it." The receptionist swallowed hard, then looked at the family. I apologize for how I treated you." Jason stood back, watching as the family walked away toward the elevators, their dignity intact. The lobby, now silent, was filled with a mixture of admiration and tension as everyone processed what had just happened. Jason grabbed his bag, turning back to the receptionist one last time. "You'd better think twice before pulling something like this again. You might not be so lucky next time." With that, Jason walked away, leaving the receptionist visibly shaken and the lobby abuzz with murmurs of approval. Jason wasn't the kind of man to look the other way when faced with injustice. After stepping in to defuse the immediate confrontation, he approached the family to understand what had happened. Michael, the father, looked visibly frustrated but tried to maintain his composure for the sake of his children. His wife, Lisa, was holding their youngest daughter's hand while their teenage son sat quietly, staring at the floor, clearly embarrassed by the ordeal. Michael took a deep breath and explained, "We booked this trip weeks ago. I made sure everything was paid up front. I even called last week to confirm the reservation." Lisa added, her voice shaking slightly, "The receptionist didn't even let us explain. She just kept saying there was no record of us in their system. And when we insisted, she said something about standards and how they couldn't accommodate walk-ins." Jason frowned. "Standards? Did she actually say that?" Lisa nodded. She said it in the most condescending tone, too. It felt personal. Michael sighed. "When I asked to speak to a manager, she said there wasn't one available. But right after that, we saw her helping another family who just walked in without a reservation. And they didn't look like they were being asked to leave." Jason's jaw tightened as he listened. It was clear this wasn't a simple mistake or oversight. "Don't worry," he said, his voice calm but firm. "I'm going to look into this. Stay here for now, and don't let them intimidate you." Jason pulled out his phone and made a few quick calls. One of his trusted contacts worked in the hospitality industry and had insider knowledge of hotel practices. Within an hour, Jason had some alarming information. The hotel wasn't new to controversy. There had been numerous complaints from black guests who reported being treated unfairly, lost reservations, extra charges, and outright rude behavior from the staff. However, these incidents rarely made it past internal reviews, as the hotel catered to an affluent clientele who valued luxury over accountability. Jason's contact revealed, "It's an open secret in the industry. They don't explicitly write anything discriminatory in their policies, but their actions speak volumes. It's all about subtle exclusion, making certain people feel unwelcome without leaving any evidence behind." This wasn't just a case of one rude receptionist, it was systemic. The hotel had a pattern of treating black guests differently, and complaints were routinely buried to protect the brand. Jason's blood boiled as he listened. This isn't just about one family being mistreated. It's about every family who's had to deal with this nonsense and didn't have anyone to stand up for them, he thought. Jason decided to take immediate action. He contacted another friend, this one in consumer protection. Coincidentally, the hotel was already scheduled for a routine inspection that afternoon. Jason explained the situation and shared what he had uncovered. The inspector, already suspicious of the hotel's practices, promised to conduct a thorough review during the visit. But Jason wasn't done yet. He called a contact in local law enforcement and laid out the details. He explained how the family had been treated and shared the information he had gathered about the hotel's history. The officer on the other end of the line assured him they would send someone to investigate. "Make sure you bring someone who knows how to deal with corporate nonsense," Jason added. "These people are good at covering their tracks." Jason returned to the lobby, where the family was still waiting. He crouched down to talk to the teenage son, who hadn't said a word since the incident began. "Hey, you doing okay?" The boy shrugged. "I'm fine. I just hate seeing my parents like this. They were so excited about this trip, and now." Jason placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. "Listen, your parents are strong, and so are you. This isn't about them. It's about people who think they can treat others like they don't matter. We're going to show them they're wrong." "All right." The boy managed a small smile. "All right." Jason then turned to Michael and Lisa. "Help is on the way. Just hang tight a little longer." As he surveyed the lobby, Jason couldn't help but notice how the receptionist continued to treat other guests with an air of superiority. A well-dressed couple walked in, and the receptionist greeted them with a wide smile, offering to upgrade their room before they even asked. Meanwhile, a family who appeared to be middle class was being told there were no rooms available, despite the fact that Jason had overheard the receptionist mention vacancies moments earlier. It was a clear demonstration of the elitist and discriminatory culture Jason had just uncovered. Jason discreetly greeted the inspector when they arrived and briefed them on the situation. He showed them screenshots of complaints he had found online, as well as emails from his contact confirming the hotel's history of discrimination. The inspector, now on high alert, promised to conduct a thorough investigation. Meanwhile, the police officers arrived and began speaking with the family to gather their account of what had happened. The receptionist, still oblivious to the storm brewing around her, continued her routine as if nothing was amiss. Jason couldn't help but smirk as he watched the pieces fall into place. The hotel staff had no idea what was coming. Jason walked back to the family and sat down with them. "I know this has been a rough day, but trust me, it's about to get better," he said. Michael looked skeptical. "You've already done so much. I don't see how this could turn around." Jason smiled. "Let's just say I have a knack for making things right. Give it a few more minutes." The family watched as the inspector began questioning the receptionist, who suddenly looked far less confident. Jason stood nearby, arms crossed, as the inspector demanded to see reservation logs and staff training records. When the receptionist stammered and tried to deflect, the inspector didn't back down. As more staff were called to the front desk, Jason leaned over to Michael and whispered, "This is what accountability looks like." The stage was set for justice to be served. The hotel's discriminatory practices were about to be exposed in a way they couldn't deny, and Jason was right at the center of it all. As the tense situation unfolded in the hotel lobby, the receptionist remained oblivious to the storm brewing behind her smug smile. She continued her condescending routine, brushing off the black family as though their complaints were inconsequential. Jason, however, stood calmly nearby, watching as justice inched closer. His posture was relaxed, but his sharp eyes never left the receptionist. The inspector makes an entrance. The hotel inspector, a no-nonsense woman named Evelyn Carter, entered the lobby with an air of authority. Dressed in a sleek gray suit, she carried a clipboard and wore a piercing expression that could cut through steel. Jason greeted her with a nod and discreetly handed her the printed evidence of complaints he had gathered. "I trust you'll find this useful," Jason said in a low voice. Evelyn glanced at the documents, her frown deepening as she flipped through the pages. "This is more than I expected. It's not just one family, they've got a pattern of this nonsense. Time to see how they explain themselves." She approached the front desk, where the receptionist was still attempting to charm a wealthy couple. Her tone oozed with insincerity as she offered them complimentary champagne for their wait. But as Evelyn cleared her throat, the receptionist froze mid-sentence, her smile faltering. "Excuse me," Evelyn said sharply. "Are you the senior receptionist here?" The woman blinked, visibly thrown off by Evelyn's commanding presence. Yes. May I help you?" "I'm Evelyn Carter, the hospitality inspector assigned to review your establishment. I'd like to speak to the manager and review your reservation logs immediately." The receptionist stammered, "The manager is currently unavailable." Jason stepped forward at that moment, his imposing frame adding weight to the scene. "That's convenient," he said dryly. "But I think you'll want to find them quickly." The receptionist's face paled. She quickly reached for the phone, her hands trembling as she dialed the manager's number. The tables turn. Within minutes, the manager arrived, a middle-aged man with a polished appearance but an air of nervousness. His forced smile faltered the moment he saw Evelyn, who wasted no time. "Your staff has been accused of racial discrimination," she said bluntly. "I'm here to investigate these claims. Please provide the reservation logs, your training protocols, and any records related to staff conduct." The manager sputtered, "I'm sure this is all a misunderstanding." Jason cut him off. "It's not. I've seen enough to know it's a pattern, not a misunderstanding. And I suggest you cooperate fully unless you want this to escalate further." Evelyn added, "Escalation is already happening. I've been contacted by local authorities as well, and they'll be arriving shortly. So, I'd recommend full transparency." The manager, clearly out of his depth, gestured for the receptionist to retrieve the requested logs. She hesitated, but under Evelyn's icy stare, she reluctantly complied. The truth comes to light. As Evelyn and Jason reviewed the records, the extent of the hotel's discriminatory practices became glaringly obvious. Several reservation logs showed discrepancies, rooms mysteriously marked as unavailable for certain guests, only to be reopened for others shortly after. Notes in the system revealed coded language that Evelyn immediately recognized as veiled racism. "Doesn't meet criteria," Evelyn read aloud, pointing to a note attached to the black family's reservation. "Care to explain what that means?" The receptionist, now visibly sweating, stammered, I'm not sure." That's not my handwriting. Jason raised an eyebrow. It's funny how no one's ever sure when they get caught. As the evidence mounted, the family sat nearby, watching the scene unfold. Michael leaned toward Lisa and whispered, "I can't believe this is actually happening. It's like something out of a movie." Lisa nodded, her eyes brimming with emotion. "It's about time someone stood up for us." The authorities arrive. Just as Evelyn was wrapping up her initial review, the sound of footsteps echoed through the lobby. 2 police officers entered, their presence commanding immediate attention. The manager's face turned a shade paler as they approached. "Afternoon," one of the officers said. "We've received reports of discriminatory practices at this establishment. Who's in charge here?" The manager raised a shaky hand. "I am. But I assure you, this is all a misunderstanding." "Save it," Jason interrupted. "You've got a history of this behavior, and the evidence is right here." He handed the officers copies of the complaints and reservation discrepancies. The officers reviewed the documents, their expressions hardening. "We'll need to take statements from the staff and the affected family," one of them said. Consequences delivered. Evelyn didn't wait for the police to finish. She turned to the manager with an authoritative tone. "Effective immediately, this hotel is under investigation. Your license to operate is at risk, and you'll be facing significant fines for these practices. Furthermore, I'm recommending termination for any staff involved in discriminatory behavior." The receptionist gasped. "Termination? But—" "You've got no one to blame but yourself," Evelyn said sharply. The manager, now sweating profusely, attempted to salvage the situation. We'll offer the family a complimentary stay and an upgrade to our best suite. And we'll, implement new training for the staff." Jason stepped forward, his gaze piercing. "An upgrade and some training don't erase what you've done. But it's a start. Just make sure this doesn't happen again, or trust me, this won't be the last time you see me." The family's moment of vindication. The family was finally escorted to the best suite in the hotel, where an apology letter and a basket of treats awaited them. Michael shook Jason's hand firmly, his voice filled with gratitude. "Thank you," he said. "I don't know how to repay you." Jason smiled. "You don't owe me anything. Just enjoy your stay and know that you're worth more than the way they treated you." Lisa added, "You didn't have to do any of this, but you did. It means the world to us." Jason nodded. Sometimes, standing up for what's right is the only thing that matters. The fallout. The news of the incident spread quickly. Guests in the lobby began whispering, and soon, several had canceled their reservations in protest. Online reviews flooded in, exposing the hotel's behavior to the public. Within days, the hotel faced a public backlash that hit their reputation hard. The manager and receptionist were fired, and the hotel was forced to issue a public apology. Evelyn ensured that the investigation results were made public, serving as a warning to other establishments. Karma strikes. As Jason left the hotel that day, he couldn't help but feel a sense of satisfaction. Justice had been served, and the staff who thought they could get away with their behavior were finally facing the consequences. Karma had done its job, and Jason had been the catalyst. Sometimes, all it took was one person willing to stand up and say, "Enough." The fallout from the events at the hotel was swift and unavoidable. By the time Jason left the premises, the story had already started to spread. Several guests in the lobby who had witnessed the confrontation pulled out their phones, recording and uploading videos of the incident to social media. Within hours, hashtags like #HotelDiscrimination and #JusticeServed were trending. The hotel's reputation takes a hit. The luxurious hotel, once lauded for its exclusivity and prestige, was now the center of a scandal. Guests began canceling their reservations, citing the incident as the reason. One viral tweet read, "If this is how they treat paying families just because of their skin color, they'll never get a dime from me." It gained tens of thousands of retweets and comments. Travel review sites were inundated with one-star reviews, detailing not only the event Jason had exposed but also similar discriminatory encounters that other guests had experienced in the past. The pattern of racism and elitism that had previously gone unnoticed was now glaringly visible for the world to see. A major travel blog picked up the story, featuring an in-depth expose on the hotel's history of turning away certain guests. Under the weight of public scrutiny, the hotel's management issued a rushed apology, but it was far too late to salvage their reputation. Jason's personal touch. As the scandal unfolded online, Jason stayed in touch with the family. He wanted to ensure that the traumatic experience they had endured would not define their getaway. Jason arranged for the family to be relocated to a different luxury hotel nearby, one known for its inclusive and welcoming environment. When the family checked into the new hotel, they were greeted warmly, with staff who went out of their way to make them feel special. Jason had quietly informed the new hotel of what had happened, and they offered the family an extended complimentary stay in one of their finest suites. Jason even joined the family for dinner that evening at the hotel's rooftop restaurant, sharing stories and laughter with them. Michael and Lisa were overwhelmed by his kindness and effort to turn their trip into a positive memory. "Thank you doesn't even feel like enough," Michael said as they raised their glasses for a toast. Jason waved it off. "What happened to you shouldn't happen to anyone. I just did what anyone with a bit of decency would do." Their two children, who had initially been quiet and shy after the ordeal, began to open up and smile again. The sight warmed Jason's heart, reminding him of why he had intervened in the first place. Karma in full force. Meanwhile, back at the original hotel, the consequences for the staff involved were severe. The receptionist, whose blatant discrimination had ignited the entire incident, was fired on the spot. But her troubles didn't end there. As videos of her behavior spread online, she became a symbol of what not to do in customer service. Public backlash flooded her personal social media accounts, with people calling her out for her actions. The manager, too, faced repercussions. It was revealed that he had been aware of the discriminatory practices but had turned a blind eye, valuing profit over fairness. He was promptly removed from his position, and his career in the hospitality industry seemed all but over. The hotel itself faced multiple lawsuits, not only from the black family but from other guests who had come forward with similar stories. The penalties and settlements drained the hotel's resources, forcing them to shut down temporarily for restructuring. However, many doubted the establishment would ever recover. A message of unity. The ripple effect of Jason's actions didn't stop there. The story inspired conversations about racial equality and fairness in the hospitality industry. Advocacy groups picked up the incident, using it as an example to push for stricter anti-discrimination policies. Jason, true to his humble nature, declined any interviews or public appearances related to the event. Instead, he focused on ensuring the family could enjoy the rest of their vacation. In their final conversation before Jason departed, Michael said, "What you did meant more than just standing up for us. It gave us hope. Hope that there are still good people willing to fight for what's right." Jason smiled. "The world's full of good people. It's just that sometimes, someone needs to step up and remind others to be better." The ultimate redemption. As the family waved goodbye to Jason, they knew that their trip, despite its rocky start, had become a story they would tell for years. Not just about injustice but about courage, resilience, and the power of standing up for what is right. The hotel staff had underestimated the ripple effects of their actions, and karma had caught up with them in a spectacular fashion. Their downfall served as a reminder that prejudice and cruelty have no place in society, and those who practice them will eventually face the consequences. For Jason, it was another day of doing what he did best, stepping in when it mattered most and delivering justice in the way only he could. The story of Jason's intervention serves as a powerful reminder of the importance of standing up against injustice, no matter where it occurs. The family's experience, though deeply painful at first, became a turning point not just for them but for countless others who witnessed Jason's unwavering stand for equality. Discrimination and prejudice have no place in any corner of society. Jason's actions demonstrated that courage and decency can cut through even the darkest moments of unfairness. By stepping in and refusing to stay silent, he reminded everyone that dignity and respect are not privileges, they are rights. Jason's role as a real-life hero went far beyond confronting the hotel staff. He inspired change, bringing attention to the need for inclusivity and fairness. His actions encouraged others to speak out against prejudice and support those who are often overlooked or mistreated. In the end, this story is about more than just one family or one incident. It is a call to action for everyone to challenge injustice wherever it arises. Whether it is on a grand stage or in the quiet moments of everyday life, standing up for what is right can create ripples that inspire and uplift. Justice prevailed that day, and Jason's courage became a symbol of what we all can strive for, a world where equality and kindness lead the way.